What my daughter called a surprise turned into something I could have never prepared for, and by the end of it, I was staring at a nightmare that carried a price tag of nearly $400,000. If you've ever believed that surprises from loved ones are always sweet and heartwarming, let me tell you, this one almost tore our family apart. So before I dive into what happened, let me ask you to stick with me until the end of this story, because it's one that carries warnings, heartbreak, and a few lessons you may never forget. And if stories like this intrigue you, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I promise you, every tale I share here will keep you questioning what you thought you knew about family, love, and trust. It started on a sunny Saturday morning, the kind where the house felt alive with energy. My daughter, Emily, who had just turned 25, told me she had a surprise planned. She wouldn't tell me what it was, only that it was life-changing. Now, Emily had always been the adventurous type, full of big dreams and ideas. She wasn't reckless, but she wasn't careful either, and that combination always worried me. As she rushed around the kitchen that morning, her smile wide and eyes glowing, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. A parent's instinct is hard to shake, and even when kids are adults, you can sense when something feels slightly off. I asked her if this was about a new job, a relationship, maybe even travel plans, but she just shook her head and laughed, telling me I'd see soon enough. I tried to play along, but in the back of my mind, I wondered, what could she possibly be hiding that she couldn't tell me directly? By afternoon, she asked me to dress up a little and be ready to leave the house at 3 p.m. She said she had already made reservations, and that we were going somewhere important. I thought maybe she was introducing me to a new partner or celebrating a milestone. But when we pulled up to the place, I froze. It wasn't a restaurant. It wasn't a family gathering. It was a real estate office. My heart skipped a beat as she hopped out of the car, clapping her hands like a child on Christmas morning. I followed her inside, confused and nervous, and there it was, a folder on the desk with her name on it, and a smiling agent greeting us. "Congratulations, Emily," he said, "you're officially a homeowner." I nearly fainted. I stood there frozen, trying to process the words coming out of the agent's mouth, while my daughter practically bounced with excitement beside me. "Homeowner?" I repeated, my voice catching halfway between disbelief and anger. Emily grinned as if she had just won the lottery and said, "Yes, Dad. Isn't this amazing? I wanted it to be a surprise. I bought a house." The air in that office felt heavy, pressing down on my chest, and I swear the walls felt closer than they were. A house? Bought? How? She didn't have the kind of money to buy property. She had an entry-level job that barely covered her expenses. And yet, there in front of me was a stack of papers with her name scrawled across the dotted lines, already signed and sealed. The agent looked between us, clearly sensing my unease, but continued smiling as if everything about this was perfectly normal. Emily pulled my arm, leading me toward a set of glossy photographs pinned to the board behind his desk. "It's beautiful, Dad. 3 bedrooms, a huge backyard, even a little porch swing out front. I thought you'd be proud of me." Her voice was eager, hopeful, almost pleading, but I couldn't stop the storm building inside me. My first words came out sharper than I intended. "Emily, how on earth did you pay for this?" She froze for a moment, her smile faltering just slightly, before brushing it off with a nervous laugh. "Well, I didn't exactly pay for it, yet. I got a mortgage, Dad. It's all handled. They approved me, and this is just the first step into my future." The word mortgage hit me like a hammer. I knew the financial weight of such commitments. I knew what it meant to be buried in debt if things went wrong, and worse, I knew Emily had no idea how brutal it could get. I asked for the documents, flipping through them while my hands trembled. Numbers jumped out at me like red warning lights: the purchase price, $380,000, the interest rate, staggeringly high for someone with a shaky credit history, and the closing costs, which alone would have drained most of her savings. My throat went dry. "Emily, do you understand what you've done?" I asked quietly. Her eyes searched mine, brimming with hope and a flicker of fear. "I've invested in my future, Dad. Isn't that what you always told me to do?" My heart ached, because she wasn't wrong. I had told her to be bold, to dream big, to chase opportunities. But I had also told her to plan, to calculate, to prepare. And this wasn't planning. This was diving into the ocean without knowing how to swim. I sat down heavily in the chair, still gripping the papers. "How much is the monthly payment?" I asked. Her face brightened again as if she had been waiting to answer. "It's only $2,600. Totally manageable. And once I get that promotion at work, it'll be nothing." I nearly dropped the folder. "Only $2,600. I repeated. "Emily, your monthly income is barely $3,200 before taxes. You can't possibly cover this. What about utilities? Food? Insurance? Emergencies? You'll drown before you've even started." She bit her lip, her confidence cracking. "But I'll figure it out," she whispered. That's when the agent chimed in smoothly, trying to reassure me. "Sir, don't worry, young buyers do this all the time. Property values are rising, and she's making an excellent investment. In a few years, she'll thank herself for this decision." I turned to him, my patience gone. "An excellent investment? You've just saddled my daughter with a noose disguised as a mortgage. She doesn't understand what she's walking into." He raised his eyebrows, clearly unused to being challenged, and glanced at Emily as if I were the unreasonable one. My daughter looked torn, her cheeks flushed, her fists clenched. She wanted me to be happy for her, but all I could feel was dread. It wasn't just about the numbers, it was about her being unprepared for the brutal weight of adulthood. When we left the office, papers in her hand and tension between us so thick it could be cut with a knife, Emily kept repeating, "Dad, why can't you just trust me? Why can't you be proud of me?" And it broke my heart, because I was proud of her courage, her independence, her drive. But as a father, I couldn't ignore the storm on the horizon. I stayed silent most of the ride home, my mind racing, my heart heavy. The surprise she thought would make me smile had already begun unraveling into a nightmare, and I feared the worst was yet to come. The nightmare didn't take long to show its teeth. Within the first month of Emily moving into her new, dream house, the cracks began to appear like hairline fractures in a piece of glass. At first, she was buzzing with excitement, inviting friends over, posting photos of the porch swing on her social media, captioning them with cheerful notes about new beginnings. She painted walls, decorated rooms, even planted a few flowers by the entrance. I tried, God knows I tried, to support her without dampening her joy. I went over one weekend with a toolbox to fix a leaking faucet and noticed unopened bills piled up on her counter. Electricity. Insurance. HOA fees. I asked if she had paid them, and she shrugged it off with a tired smile, "I'll handle it, Dad." But the worry lines on her face told me otherwise. By the second month, reality hit her like a storm. Her paycheck evaporated within days of arriving. The mortgage took the lion's share, leaving scraps for everything else. She started skipping meals, her fridge half empty, her lights dimmed to save on power. The house that was supposed to represent freedom and success became a cage, each wall closing in a little tighter every day. I'd find her sitting on the porch late at night, staring at the lawn as if it mocked her, tears shining in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. The tipping point came when her car broke down. A simple alternator replacement, the mechanic said, $1,200. Emily broke down right there in the garage, sobbing into her hands, whispering that she didn't even have $200 to spare. That night, she called me, her voice trembling. "Dad, I don't know what to do." I could feel her pain through the phone, and it cut me like a knife. As much as I wanted to swoop in and rescue her, I also knew that if I kept bailing her out, she'd never learn the brutal lesson this mistake was teaching her. Still, I couldn't watch my daughter drown. I went over, sat with her in the living room of that enormous house, surrounded by furniture she had bought on credit, and asked her to show me everything, every bill, every expense, every debt. She resisted at first, ashamed, but eventually slid a crumpled folder toward me. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Her credit cards were maxed. Her mortgage payments were already behind. Late fees stacked on late fees. The total hole she was sinking into. Nearly $400,000 when you added it all up with the high-interest mortgage. Emily, I whispered, this isn't just a house anymore. This is a nightmare. This is going to consume you. She broke down then, sobbing against my shoulder, confessing that she thought surprising me would make me proud, that she wanted to prove she wasn't just a little girl anymore. My heart shattered into a million pieces. She hadn't bought this house for herself, she had bought it to earn my approval, to show me she could stand tall on her own. But in chasing that dream, she had shackled herself to chains heavier than she could carry. And there I was, torn between anger and love, between scolding her for her recklessness and holding her tightly as she cried. The following weeks were the hardest. She started working overtime, even picking up side gigs just to scrape by, but it wasn't enough. The bills grew faster than her income. Collection agencies began calling, their voices sharp and threatening. She changed from the bright, ambitious young woman I knew into someone worn down, her spark dimmed, her laughter replaced by constant sighs. Every time I saw her, I saw the weight of that house crushing her spirit. The surprise she thought would change her life for the better had instead buried her in a nightmare worth nearly $500,000. And as much as I wanted to rescue her, a part of me knew that this was a battle she had to face herself, though I would never stop standing by her side. The days that followed blurred into one long nightmare, each morning a heavier weight pressing against my chest as though gravity itself had turned against me. I tried to rationalize, to tell myself that mistakes happen and that maybe this wasn't as catastrophic as it looked, but every phone call from the bank, every sternly worded letter from the lawyers representing the other party, shattered that hope into pieces. My daughter, once so radiant with excitement, now avoided my eyes when she walked into the room, her steps timid as though afraid her presence alone would break me further. I wanted to shout, to ask her how she could have been so careless, so naive, but each time I opened my mouth, the image of her trembling lips and guilty, tear-filled eyes silenced me. Instead, I bore the brunt of the storm alone, pretending to be strong while the ground beneath me crumbled. Every lawyer I consulted reminded me that undoing what had been signed was nearly impossible. Contracts bound in ink and witnessed in law had a chokehold that left little room for mercy. The weight of $400,000 wasn't just numbers on paper, it was the security I had built over decades, my life savings, my safety net, and now it dangled on the edge of vanishing. Friends began to whisper, some offering sympathy while others judged in hushed tones, as though I had been reckless for letting my daughter take charge of something so important. Those whispers echoed louder than the ticking clock in my mind, feeding into the gnawing sense of failure that consumed me every night when sleep refused to come. The silence between me and my daughter grew thicker, a wall neither of us dared to climb, and yet beneath it all was the unspoken fear that our bond, once unshakable, had been fractured beyond repair. But in the depth of that despair, a thought flickered faintly, a thought that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare wasn't the end but the beginning of something I hadn't yet understood. I clung to that spark, desperate for it to grow into a flame, because without it, all I had left was darkness. As weeks turned into months, the weight of the $400,000 nightmare didn't just sit on my shoulders, it carved deep scars into the way I lived, the way I breathed, and the way I looked at everything I had once held dear. Every conversation with my daughter felt like walking across shattered glass barefoot, careful, hesitant, terrified of one wrong step that could reopen wounds we hadn't even begun to heal. She tried, in her own fragile way, to mend the damage. There were mornings when she would place a cup of coffee on the table in front of me without a word, her eyes lingering just long enough to silently plead for forgiveness. But forgiveness, as I learned, isn't something that comes easily when trust has been broken on such a catastrophic scale. I wrestled every night with the conflict between my identity as a father and my identity as a man who had worked tirelessly to build something out of nothing, only to see it slip away because of one careless signature. Lawyers continued to press me, warning that recovery was slim and that the battle ahead would drain more than just money, it would drain the very spirit that once kept me fighting. Yet there was also a turning point buried within the chaos. I realized that if I continued to dwell solely on the loss, I would lose far more than money, I would lose my daughter entirely. And so, one evening, when the weight of silence grew unbearable, I finally spoke. I told her the truth, not the filtered, gentle version, but the raw, uncut pain I had been carrying. I told her how every cent of that $400,000 represented nights I had stayed awake working, days I had gone hungry so she could eat, dreams I had postponed so hers could flourish. She cried harder than I had ever seen her cry, her sobs shaking the walls of our home like thunder, but within those tears I felt the first crack in the wall between us begin to crumble. It wasn't money that defined us, and deep down, I knew this nightmare had become a brutal lesson both of us were meant to learn. As bitter as it was, it forced her to see the value of trust, responsibility, and consequence in a way no lecture ever could. And it forced me to confront my own obsession with security, teaching me that sometimes the greatest wealth lies not in what's in your bank account, but in the bonds you protect at all costs. My story, as painful as it remains, is not one of defeat, it's one of survival, of learning that love and forgiveness are far heavier than money, yet far more powerful when carried. And if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, then you know one thing for certain. Life will always throw nightmares your way, but how you rise from them defines who you truly are. If you don't want to miss more stories like this, stories that unravel the fragility of trust, the strength of family, and the hidden lessons in our darkest moments, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs it, and join me as we continue to uncover the truths that life so often hides. Because sometimes the worst nightmares are the ones that wake us up to what truly matters.